we're speaking to Richard Jacob, the CEO of Hulamin. Richard, if you were to highlight one challenge that is unique to the aluminium industry, what would that be?
I think probably the most serious threat to our industry is the potential disruption as a result of the closure of the Bayside cast house in Richards Bay. There are many businesses that are dependent, not only Hulamin. Already we've seen the disruption to billet supply for the extruders. The cable and wire industry is in quite a tough place. So the aluminium industry is in quite a tough place as far as the particular type of aluminium supply from Bayside.
And what about the aluminium price? The second half of this period, we saw the aluminium price going from $2,400 a tonne to around about $2,000 a tonne. Are you continuing to see pressure on the aluminium price?
Yeah, look, for us, we trade on top of the aluminium price, and our customers actually pay the same price for aluminium as we do. So really the aluminium price itself is not a threat to us. It's much more the strength of the rand and our ability to get a good revenue from our sales on top of the LME price.
Getting good revenue on your sales price, what is that? I mean, in terms of your strategy going forward, how can you boost the top line? Because that's a key focus area in this current environment. It's easy to improve the bottom line by just extricating efficiencies out of a company, but it's that top line growth that is required.
Yes. Now the secret for us, and fortunately we've got very good equipment and very good people, and our business model is based on selling very high value, difficult to produce, and consequently high margin products. So the more we can increase the proportion of those high value products, the more we increase our aggregate or our average margin in the business, and that really is our focus. We're fortunate that we've got a very good position in some difficult to produce products, can end stock, brazing sheet, heat treated plate, and the product that really is going to grow and contribute quite significantly going forward is light gauge foil. This is very, very thin gauge foil, much thinner than you'd buy in the supermarket, and that is used for long life packaging products like milk and fruit juice.
Is it necessary, do you feel, for companies to think about moving potentially from this being their capital base to other territories, given the challenges you're facing in South Africa?
I think it would be a huge tragedy. South Africa desperately needs jobs. It needs the per capita wealth to increase. It needs all stakeholders in South Africa need a strong manufacturing base here. And I'm really sensing that the broader stakeholder base is getting the same message, and there is a kind of a rallying around the need for this economy to support manufacturing in a much stronger way going forward.
Talk to me about the downstream industries that you have. Now, I know you've been involved in aluminium sheets, and two of the bigger examples out there are the King Shaka Airport down in Durban, and also the World Cup stadiums. You were integral to that construction process.
Yes. Now, we're very excited. We make a number of products that were used in those stadiums, mainly the cladding of the Moses Mabhida Stadium in Durban and the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium in Port Elizabeth, also many other products in the seats in the Soccer City Stadium. But for us, our downstream customers and the support that we get from them and the products that they produce are really integral to Hulamin.
Richard, so much is made of gold, platinum, copper, all the metals that we regularly talk about on the business news desks at CNBC Africa. We seldom focus on aluminium itself. Can you give me a little bit of insight into aluminium? As I said, we're looking at an average price at the moment of around about $2,000 a tonne, and you're looking at output of what, 250,000 tonnes a year?
Yeah, aluminium is actually a wonder metal. It's very, very versatile. Just to give you some examples, we will fly in aeroplanes, and that's because aluminium is very light and very, very strong. So as a consequence of that strength to weight ratio, the consumption of aluminium in motor vehicles is increasing very strongly, from around about 60 kilograms per vehicle in 1990 to 160 in 2010. What that does is it makes cars lighter, better performance and better fuel consumption, and at the same time the aluminium is infinitely recyclable, and so consequently people are rushing to pull old cars apart and recycle the aluminium.
So does that mean when we see increased stats on the vehicle front in China, that will boost in turn the aluminium price as it does both palladium and platinum?
It certainly does have an impact. You know, the fact that aluminium is so recyclable is actually an incredible dynamic worldwide. In Brazil, which is the highest recycling rate of beverage cans, close to 100% of beverage cans are recycled. That means if you drink a sip of beer out of an aluminium beer can, around about 6 weeks later that can reappears in the store, ready to be purchased as a new can with a new label on it.
What about the demand-supply equation? What are we sitting at in terms of supply? And as we've spoken about, demand can be in various industries, one now being the vehicle industry, but from a supply factor.
Yeah, I think supply and demand tends to follow each other on more of a long-term cycle. I think the biggest news there has been a major project in Saudi Arabia. There's about $11 billion project of an integrated aluminium complex right through from alumina production, carbon production, a smelter and a medium-sized rolling mill that's just starting to be constructed at the moment. So that really is just driven by increasing demand from the market.
Of the 60 countries we mentioned earlier, you've also got a foray into the United Arab Emirates. And we've seen the fallout of that territory over the financial crisis. Are you finding traction in your operations in the UAE?
Yeah, we sell into the UAE and we've certainly seen some weakness in that market. But depends, you know, the construction market in the UAE has really been hard hit, and we're quite disappointed that our volumes there have been quite weak over the last 18 months.
Do you expect them to recover?
We do expect them to recover. You know, that region of the world is growing sharply. The UAE particularly is a hub of activity for many Arab states, and what we've seen consequently is the significant growth in our sales of beverage can products into that region as more and more people are consuming beverages in cans.
Of the 60 countries that you operate in, you've got to be seen as a barometer of the geographic environment. Are there any other territories that you feel are under pressure we hope it's post the financial crisis and we're not going to see this double-dip recession on the cards. But can you see on the ground where the problem areas are?
Certainly in Western Europe, you know, year on year from 2008 to 2009, we saw a 90% drop in our sales in the UK. That has recovered somewhat, but certainly the area that is struggling to gain traction has been Western Europe.
Do you think that we've seen the worst of the economic crisis?
Yeah, these winds change direction so quickly. You know, just as we were kind of hoping that the rand would be on a weaker trajectory, I think when the Reserve Bank announced a holding of interest rates, so we've now seen a sudden strengthening of the rand. So really we try to focus on what we're good at, and that is producing products at lowest cost and greatest yields.
During the 2007-2008 crisis, did Alan Fourie have to cut into the teams within the Hulamin fold in terms of human capital?
We were very fortunate that the base employment of Hulamin was unaffected. Unfortunately, we had to release a number of contract staff and temporary employees in the first half of last year.
And if you face a similar crisis, if we do fall into that double-dip recession, are you poised to act aggressively? Will you need to act aggressively?
I'll do my absolute best not to disrupt the Hulamin team. Manpower is a big chunk of our costs, and I think it all depends on the severity of the situation that we face.
Can you extricate more efficiencies out of your cost base?
I think there are always opportunities to eliminate waste, improve efficiencies, improve yields. Clearly, you know, the longer and the better you are, it becomes a bit of a diminishing returns game. But certainly I can see, and we as a team can see quite a lot more efficiencies that we can get. I think the biggest opportunity though for Hulamin is to capitalize on these assets that have been put in place in the last year or two and really getting the maximum output from them.
Where are you on those new capital expenditure plans in terms of being able to capitalize on expenditure?
Yeah, look, that whole project is now behind us. We've started up all the equipment, and we are quite successfully doing trials and starting to contribute to production. Unfortunately, we are not yet receiving and feeling the benefits on the revenue line, but that definitely is ahead of us.
Where do you want to take this company with yourself at the helm? What are your targets that you've set in place?
I think the biggest target is to get a profit that matches what our shareholders could have got if they invested elsewhere, and that's really a rallying point that I'm working very hard on getting the entire organisation behind me in focusing on a reasonable profit for our shareholders.
Do you engage regularly with your shareholders, the likes of Coronation?
We certainly do, yes. No, we engage with them quite regularly.
What is your shareholder register in terms of international exposure at this stage?
It's very, very small. Our major shareholders are the IDC, Coronation and Investec, and between them they hold more than 70% of our shares, and the balance are really local market shareholders. The current exposure...
Is there any opportunity to expand the free float down the line? As you say, 70% held by 3 shareholders, so relatively difficult for the retail man out there to get exposure to Hulamin.
Yeah, look, I think 30% is maybe could be seen in a different way. That it's really only IDC that have a different agenda to any other shareholder. Both Coronation and Investec have a number of dynamics that they deal with, and there's no guarantee from them that they won't sell tomorrow.
2007, you listed Hulamin Limited on the JSE, and you embarked on the BEE transaction. Is that BEE transaction reaping benefits for you now? There are those who unfortunately claim with the financial crisis, and yours happened just before the financial crisis, that BEE deals are underwater.
Yeah, look, ours is really a more enhanced option scheme which only vests in 2014. So really the future will determine the level at which our BEE shareholders benefit from that transaction.
When you joined Hulamin some 20 years ago, did you think one day you'd be sitting in the CEO's office?
We all dream. I certainly did have it as a dream and as ambition, and I've been working towards it for 20 years.
What do you think the key is to you achieving your dream?
I think the biggest task for me is to unlock the capability in our people. I have a very, very strong passion about the contribution of not just the 10% people at the top of the organization using their brains and the 90% using their muscles, but the entire 100% of the organization feeling that they're in a position that they want to contribute and use their intellect in addition to their muscles.
Let's talk about the age factor. You're very young to be sitting in a CEO office. What is your advice to other young corporate executives wanting to get ahead?
I think my initial advice would be to really stick to your strengths. I think I've certainly tried to utilize what I believe and what feedback I've received is what I'm good at, and that's really generally leadership and inspiring people. And I think other people have different set of skills and talents, and I would encourage people to really try and capitalize on what they're good at.